Thank you. Today I'll be presenting, it advanced too quickly. Today I'll be presenting a strontium study looking at late prehistoric sacrifice horses in Old Prussian and Lithuanian cemeteries. So this research is part of my Marie Curie BONES project. BONES is an absolutely tortured acronym, but it stands for Baltic Paganism, Osteology, and New Evidence from Zooarchaeology. And this project has grown into an international collaboration. We span 11 institutions across 5 countries. And our overall objective is to reassess how animals were used in rituals in Prussian and Lithuanian cemeteries. So today I'm going to focus specifically on our evidence from horse sacrifices. So what do we think we know about these horse sacrifices? So first of all, there are evidence that these were elaborate public rituals. At some points in time, they may have even involved elaborate horse races or events where a horse was run to exhaustion and then forced into a very small pit, held down with large stones and buried alive. We have evidence for the deposition of whole horses, parts of horses, horses with riding equipment deposited independently. And we also know that this was an enduring rite that lasted well over 1,000 years. So what do we think we know about the horses themselves? They were all thought to be drawn from the local tarpon population. Only male horses were thought to have been sacrificed. And even in cases where the horse is buried totally separately from the human burial, so they can't be linked to an individual human burial, these sacrifices were still thought to be tied to the death of important men in a community, perhaps warriors or chiefs. So the BONES project is attempting to reassess all of that received wisdom, but today I'm going to focus specifically on our evidence for where these horses were sourced from. So in general, we're questioning where the horses were sourced and whether this changed over time. So today I'll be presenting new baseline strontium data from northeastern Poland that we developed as part of the project. I'll be showing some new evidence we have for the very long distance transport of certain sacrificed horses. And then finally, I'll try to put our research into the context of current discussions of Viking Age mobility of horses specifically. So just a quick note on chronology. Horse sacrifices appear during the period of Roman influence in this region, and they increase in popularity significantly during the Viking period. And then starting in the 13th century, you have Germanic crusading orders moving in and beginning to forcibly convert the old Prussian tribes. Lithuanian groups resist, but they do officially convert to Christianity in the 14th century, at which point in time horse offerings disappear from human cemeteries. So my research area is along the southeastern coast of the Baltic Sea. We sampled horses from 9 sites in modern Kaliningrad, northeastern Poland, and Lithuania. In general, our Polish sites date to the period of Roman influence through the migration period, whereas the horse burials from Lithuania and Kaliningrad likely date to the Viking Age, although both cemeteries do have material that has been dated to the Roman period as well. So we sampled teeth from 74 horses. Ideally, if they were available, we sampled both the M1 and the M3. We did not do serial sampling, mostly because we couldn't afford it. So we took a snapshot sample from the M1 and one from the M3 so that we could try to see the earliest mineralization residence area and then the latest mineralization residence. We also sampled modern plants to create a baseline for northeastern Poland. The original research design also, we were supposed to be doing that in Kaliningrad as well, but due to the current political situation, obviously we had to scrap that plan. So we attempted to also just cobble together a working regional baseline from published plant or archaeological fauna data to get the biologically available strontium baseline. So this slide shows the regional baseline that we've cobbled together. So remember, when we first designed this project, there was absolutely zero data available. And in just the 5 years since we originally thought up this project, we have significantly more research that's being done on the strontium baseline in the area. So this is great work. So a quick explanation of this map, which is a little confusing. The base map is showing the geologic age of the underlying geology. So the legend over there goes from Quaternary, so the most recent deposits, and then they get older as it goes down the legend. And then on the right, we have I'm afraid that's kind of blocking it. But anyway, that's the expected strontium ratios. And then each of these individual circles show a local baseline. So the value on the left is the minimum baseline value, and then on the right you have the maximum baseline value. So in general, the strontium isotope value should trend from less to more radiogenic as you move from Poland north and east into Lithuania. We do have this radiogenic outlier in Prussia, but that was sampled from a national forest. So we might be seeing a forest canopy effect in that value, and it might not be actually representative. So here is our Polish data set. The top of the baseline is shaded due to the uncertainty with the forest data point that I just told you about. So two general comments about this data set. Not a ton of non-local individuals, at least not transported from a long distance. So these individuals that are less radiogenic, actually we see values like that not too far away in western and southern Poland, so that's not that unexpected. But we do have an unexpectedly wide baseline. So when you look at a more detailed geological map of Poland, that becomes a little bit more obvious as to why that would be. So the geological parent material is from glacial deposition, the source of which is heterogeneous, and therefore it's not unexpected that we would have ununiform strontium isotope ratio values. So for one example, this is the site of Paprotki. We took 6 modern plant samples, so 3 from around the cemetery, and then 3 from the settlement that was about 1 kilometer away. And we got values ranging from 711 to 715. So this is just for one site. So we think that the wide baseline is actually reasonable. So knowing that this level of variability may exist, we could even be more conservative and pop a standard deviation on the top and bottom of our baseline, and then really make it a chore to try to identify non-local horses. So anyway, that's our baseline data from Poland. Again, we're not seeing a ton of long distance transport of sacrificed horses in the Roman and migration period. So let's turn to more exciting opportunities. So this is our data from the site of Marvel, and the site is actually in the city of Kaunas in Lithuania. So this represents data from 20 individuals. So the y-axis is the strontium ratio values, and this is organized by the horse data just spread out. And the striking point of this figure is the obvious outlier, which had a value of 7382, so absolutely non-local, not possible that this individual came from the Eastern Baltic region. So the nearest area with this that we would anticipate this kind of highly radiogenic strontium signature would be the Uppsala region of Sweden. And the baseline for this region established by Price and colleagues in 2018 is actually also lower than the horse from Marvella. Their reported maximum range for their baseline is 731. However, within their paper, they actually do report a sheep from the area with a value as high as 0.76, which they thought was just crazy too high, so they didn't include it in their baseline. But they do note within the paper that geological surveying of the Precambrian geology in Sweden does regularly provide values that are greater than 735. Of course, not included in this map are values from Finland, which also regularly return highly radiogenic values that would be consistent with the horse at Marvella. But I should just note that also the context of this cemetery is that we have the majority of the horse burials seem to date to the Viking Age. So I think that the Swedish origin for the horse is the most obvious conclusion. Unfortunately, we don't have a carbon-14 date for horse 176, but that is in the work, and we're kind of hoping for a Viking Age date. So we'll return to the Scandinavian connection in a few slides. I just want to return to the data from Marvello quickly. So if you look at it without our outlier, so we have a more close-up picture of all the individuals from Marvella, we do see a number of individuals that are more radiogenic than we would be expected from the local baseline. So these individuals could also be consistent with an origin in Sweden, southern Sweden, but they're also consistent with Eastern Lithuania, which is only about 100 kilometers away. So that would be the more obvious conclusion to draw. So moving on, here's the data from Kaliningrad. Again, we weren't able to establish our own baseline. So this is an unpublished baseline from the site of Whiskyouten, which is nearby to Kolmi and Aleška. There were some issues with their baseline, which is why it didn't get published independently. So I'm just going to ignore these guys because I don't feel confident enough in the baseline to really make a lot of interpretation about the individuals resting right above it. But these guys are definitely not local again. So they're so radiogenic that they must have come from a Precambrian geology. And again, a Swedish origin is a potential, and that would be the closest area that has highly radiogenic or consistently radiogenic values. Oh, actually, I'm going to go back really quickly. So oxygen isotope data from these horse teeth would obviously be exceptionally helpful to narrow down the potential areas of juvenile residence. So hopefully we can carry on and get funding for additional isotopic research to try to confirm that these individuals are consistent with a Swedish origin. So unfortunately, the radiogenic horses from Kaliningrad, the organic preservation at the site was so poor that it will not be possible to radiocarbon date the Kaliningrad horses. But individuals buried nearby have been directly dated from the 10th to the 13th century. So this overlaps the Viking period at the site and also the late Iron Age to medieval transition period. So we feel pretty confident they're at least the later period and not Roman period horse burials. So also, to finish off, I want to quickly situate these findings within other recent research. So I don't know if it was covered in the press everywhere you guys in the audience live, but the British press absolutely had a field day with this new paper by Tessie Luffelman and her colleagues showing that Scandinavians likely traveled with their animals to Britain, and then the animals were also buried with individuals at the cemetery of Heath Wood. And I think the paper was excellent and they made their case quite convincingly, but there were some critics who weren't convinced by the strontium ratio value from the horse at Heath Wood. So that strontium value was only 715, and some complained that it wasn't highly radiogenic enough to be consistent necessarily with Sweden. So I think that the findings from the Bones Project are quite complementary to this study because our values are so high that it can't be contested that they are non-local horses. But our study obviously is needing to wait for better dating so that we can actually confirm that our material is Viking age. So the takeaways. So we've provided some new baseline data for northeastern Poland. We've identified highly radiogenic, undoubtedly imported horses sacrificed in Prussian and Lithuanian territory, but we do need to wait on additional dating to confirm their Viking age, as we do suspect they are based on the typological evidence from the sites. The addition of oxygen isotopes would certainly help to refine our interpretation of the origin of these non-local horses, and perhaps also support our preliminary conclusion that they're a Scandinavian origin. So stay tuned. Our Bones team is hoping to rewrite the story of these Baltic horse sacrifices in the near future. And so the next time you binge watch a series about the Vikings, look out for some additional actors in the longboats. So I just want to quickly thank our funders, so the European Union, National Geographic Society, and Cardiff University. And thank you for your attention.